Welcome to another exciting episode of the Business of Digital podcast, featuring your hosts, Matt Siltala and Dave Rohr. Hey guys, excited to have you join us on another one of these Business of Digital podcasts. Grateful for you always, the listeners. You guys are what make us do this. And so I think we've got Dave over there somewhere. How's it going, Dave?
Hiding in my house for more construction.
So we're continuing this series, Dave, and today we have Mark Barrera with us, okay? And we were just chatting about, and Mark's probably going to be mad that I share this because he's not the kind of person he's the kind of person that does these things behind the scenes to not get recognition, but we were talking about, we were at a PubCon in Hawaii at one point, and
this is like 10 years ago almost.
Yeah, and he had paid for a bill with, like 40 or 50 people?
Don't say how much, doesn't matter.
Not going to, but he had paid the bill, and I didn't know that until we were chatting about that right now. But I've been on many sessions with Mark, and we've been around the block, so to speak. But Mark Barrera right now, he is head of SEO at Trust Radius, and other things as well. And I'm going to let Mark go ahead and just introduce himself with whatever else he wants to our listeners. But Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's fun to talk about 10 years ago. And
thanks for that dinner. finally sure. I can thank you.
One day we'll all get together again and have another.
Oh, man, I look forward to that.
Yeah, so just quick synopsis of me. Like, you guys have been doing this forever. So I've kind of been primarily on the agency side for about a decade, and then ventured out to the in-house side for the last, 4 years, give or take now. Previously was at Ziff Davis, running SEO for PC Mag, Mashable, BlackFriday.com, Offers.com, a whole host of sites over there. And then, as mentioned, running SEO over at Trust Radius right now.
And what is Trust Radius right now? Or what is it that, how would you describe?
Yeah, so we are a peer review platform for B2B. So anyone looking to buy software, enterprise software, that type of thing, you want to figure out what's going to be best for you. We have some of the best, highest quality reviews in the space so that you can come figure out which product's going to match your needs and help you along in that buying decision so that you're not wasting all that money when you invest in the SaaS.
Awesome. Very good.
So competing with the likes of Gartner and G2 and that world.
Very, very cool. All right, Dave. Well, This is a series that you put together, my friend, and so I'm going to let you jump in here with Mark and get this thing rolling.
So no pressure.
No pressure.
Mr. Mark. Also, we just found out that Mark is a listener on a Spotify, so good to know that it does work on Spotify.
I was telling Mark, though, that I don't think he heard it, but when we were talking about Spotify, it also gives me clout with my kids because, I'm on Spotify. That's the only way that I can be cool.
It's funny for me. I have to borrow time from them. I need to get the family count. I haven't done that, and so I'm battling them to even listen sometimes.
That's funny.
So, Mark, you do have an interesting background because, like me, you spent a lot of time, although we flipped because I was in-house first and then I went agency solo. You were solo, grew that agency, sold the agency, and then went in-house. So we've always been like opposite, I guess. So whenever I'm in-house, you're agency.
Totally, yeah.
From a management leadership standpoint, how are those three different from consultant / running an agency to working at an agency for other people and being in-house? What similarities are there and what differences are there, have you seen?
Yeah, and I know we're talking about leadership, so I'll kind of phrase it in that regard.
Well, you can go off the rails if you want.
I for sure will. I'll start there and then definitely go off the rails. But on the consultant side, I'd say you're leading yourself and having to be self-motivated and push yourself, but you're also leading your clients, and there's a heavy investment in making sure they do good. So there's that pressure, and I'd say the consultant side of it too is you're a true entrepreneur as well. You've got to figure it all out, make sense of it. But the good side is compared to kind of the agency is you're really only figuring out for yourself. You don't have anyone depending on you, so your failure isn't shared or your success isn't shared. And I'd say that's what kind of the big differentiator then taking that to an agency side is now you've got families to feed that aren't your own. You've got a deeper level investment in some cases from your customers. So you're leading in a lot of different ways and helping people to grow and learn. So it's not just about the customers, it's also about a team and managing those people and making sure they're growing and learning as well, because you're really impacting their life in a way that most people don't realize. And then in-house, kind of a whole different, you get to step away from some of that pressure of the ownership of things to really focus on what you're doing. And so that's been for me really nice. One of the reasons I went to the in-house side was based on a family change for me. My wife is pregnant, so we kind of reprioritized. Do I want to be working hard and focused on that, or be able to get a paycheck and step back and be with my family? So that was a big reason for the change for me to kind of leave the agency side and go in-house and have that stability and less pressure in many regards.
And as far as fighting the fights as a leader, for either your clients from an agency side or internal, have you noticed any similarities or differences when you're either fighting for like pay raises for your team or bonuses or perks, or fighting for, resources? Say you're at the agency and you've got 3 clients, or maybe the agency's got a bunch of clients. Have you ever approached or had to internally fight and get certain resources or certain people?
Yeah,
that
always.
You can talk about.
Totally. It is funny, actually. At Ziff Davis days, it was fun. I tried to fight for, we were a large company in multiple brands, and so we had SEO departments kind of all over. I just managed one of those teams. But I was fighting, to get people from other teams. But it is a different, I'd say, corporate environment is really what I felt on the in-house side. Now I'm on kind of the startup version of that, and they're definitely different fights. Startup, you're fighting, across the company to prove your value as it stands in the company, because you've got to do what can move the needle the most to get that startup growth going. Corporate, it's a little bit different. Budgets aren't pushing forward as fast as maybe a startup, and things are a little bit more rigid and takes a lot more massaging of people and message, and just takes time to get things done in some of those environments. And then, agency, that's definitely unique when you're fighting with clients to get things done, or get them to think your way, because you're not as embedded in their business, and you're never going to be the same as someone inside telling them to do something. One of the perks of a consultant sometimes is that you're getting paid to validate something they hear. They just need the third party validation. But when you're bringing something new, it's a little different story, that you've really got to sell it and convince the whole internal team of the value or the idea you have. So yeah, you really got to kind of cater how you fight for things depending on where you are and what situation you're in, for sure.
I don't know if I've talked about this example before, and I have to think about how to phrase it so that it doesn't give away which client it was a long time ago. But there was once an instance when I worked, we'll just say I was consulting for someone or somewhere, and our contact there literally gave us like a 3-page document and said, I've spent 6 months trying to convince stakeholders internally, like, that this is the rules. And so can you just take this, change wording, massage it so that it put your logo on it, put your name on it, speaking of the validation from the third party agency, and we will pass it around and say, look, we talked to the agency, here's their POV. We talked to the consultant, here's their POV. And went into one single meeting, and it was the issue was dead. It was solved.
No, it's true. And again, I think their honesty in stating it to you that way was very helpful. Sometimes they don't, and they lay out their vision and plans, and you realize that sometimes you've got to take that and reiterate it to them. But yeah, I like that approach, their honesty.
It was they'd spent 6 months, had so many meetings, and it just cracks me up that the larger the company, the more hurdles. And like, how much time do you spend, Mark will say, on PowerPoint now for presentations internally for something that you could probably email, or even in the past at Ziff or somewhere else? Like, the larger the company, would you say it's true that the more time you spend on reports and internal politics stuff?
Totally. The larger the company, the more you've got to make everyone believe in you. And I'd say that's a big difference. And I'm very lucky in my role at Trust Radius, where I'm viewed as the expert and they trust in my decisions. So I don't have to back everything up with as much data or put together fancy presentations to get enough buy-in. Of course, I've got to lay it out and make sense of it and explain the plan, but it's easier for me in this environment than a corporate environment where there's 50 stakeholders across multiple teams that all have a different level of involvement, because you've really got to make sure you cater that message to each of them. And to your point, that's a lot of PowerPoint time to make sure you're getting that message right for each of those stakeholders. So I think for me, that's the way I look at it. What is the trust in my experience as a leader in this, and then how much does my team lean on that? And the more you have that, the easier it makes it for sure. And that's why on the agency side or the consultant side, the more you can show that value and get that relationship, the easier that's going to become as well. So you're not having to justify everything and explain it over and over again.
Do you have a process for that? I know it probably changes from project to project, or is there any general process from this is the project we want, and it's you have been tasked with, whatever are KPIs and goals, and your team or someone has brought this project to you. How do you then take that project and work to get it done? Either now or in the past.
Yeah, and I think there's two sides of that. When someone hands you a project, is it the right project? You've got to validate that, and if not, help them realize that they're pushing you down the wrong path. And that's where I'm always just kind of goals oriented. Let's make sure we align on the goals, because we can do tactics and strategies all day that maybe don't get us where we need. Then again, to the implementation, it's that same type of thing, the relationship and the trust that you've built. And that comes back to, again, kind of this leadership side of it. And I think that's one of the things I've learned is that catering your message, understanding and reading people and knowing how to talk to them and developing that relationship with people is so important to being able to execute on any project and get things done and have people work with you. There's more relationship in it than I think people realize to execute. It's funny at Trust Radius, one of the things I told them, they're like, well, how are you going to work with the teams? How are you going to make this happen? I was like, easy, donuts and tacos. It's my form of bribery. If I can sit down and have a breakfast taco with you or give you donuts, you're going to like me right away, and we can have that time to start a relationship. And it's kind of a joke, but it's true. I do that. I
was going to say it's funny, but it's true.
Yeah, and I still do that. I'll bring in tacos and donuts, and everyone knows what I'm doing, but yet they still take the time to come in and have a donut or taco with me. And again, that changes that ability to work with people and push those projects through. And again, then you've got that expertise. You handle that, you show them that you know what you're doing, and you show them you can work together. I think that can take you a long way.
I used to, when I was in-house, if I knew I was going to a conference, I'd go and ask a couple people from other teams, especially the IT team. And I was like, oh, hey, here's a list of all of the companies that are going to be, giving swag away. Is there any type of swag you want for you, your wife, your kids, a t-shirt? Like, is there anything you'd want? Because I'm like, I got so much, I can grab you some. Oh yeah, this is what I'd want. And then I'd bring it back. Or if your IT team is having a late, release, even if they're not working on your project, order them pizza on the marketing budget.
Always. Yep. Food. I'm telling you, food
it
goes
is.
a long
It's
way.
crazy. Food. Like suddenly pizza, you tell the higher ups that, oh, hey, for the team tonight, we got their pizza because we know they're working late, and it does impact one of our projects, and we really want to make sure it goes live. They're like, oh, cool. And suddenly, if there's a problem, guess who's willing to stay maybe a little bit later?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how much food is great bribery. Have you done, because there's one problem right now is everyone is work from home. So have you done anything different or new with remote teams or with the work from home right now?
Yeah, we've definitely shifted kind of how we work. It's interesting. We use 15.5 as kind of a measurement of our team on a weekly basis. We track OKRs against that. And one of the things we do each week is kind of, get a pulse check on different things. How are people doing? What do they like about remote life? And what we kind of saw quickly was that about half of our team enjoyed being remote and was more productive. About half really missed the office environment. So it's good to see, who those people were and then understand how you needed to work with them. Because the ones that missed the office, you've got to treat them a little bit different. And the ones that are embracing the remote, maybe you don't have to do the same things. Um, but for me, one of the changes was just kind of going to a daily morning stand up. When we were in the office, we could talk and we all shared a space, so it was easy to just bring up topics. But in that remote, we lost that. So I wanted to make sure the team had 30 minutes of that every day, regardless. So we jump on a Zoom call, we just kind of talk about what's going on. Sometimes we don't even talk about work and it's just personal things, but it's back to that, just making sure we're communicating and keeping that open. So that was one change. Beyond that, I think it's just more frequency of contact and making sure you're checking in with people. So one of the things I did in the early days was I would just find someone on Slack and say, hey, just popping by your office to say hi, because again, that's something I would have done in the office. I try to walk around and say hi to people. How do you do that on Slack? So I was like, hey, I'll just be honest. This is me popping by your office and chat for a couple of minutes, see how they're doing, and move on and do that. So it's back to kind of maintaining those normal touch points you would have with people, but in a new digital way with the nature of remote. And I was also lucky to have led remote teams and be led remotely at Ziff Davis. We were kind of distributed between New York and Austin and other areas. So I kind of knew what it took to manage people and be managed and how that looked. So it wasn't too much of a change for me, but again, understanding the team around me and how they were adapting was definitely crucial.
I hate Slack. I say it all the time, I know. And Matt laughs every time.
If it's not Slack, it's something else though, right?
Very, very true.
Yeah, I know. It's what are you going to use? Yeah, emails, just as bad. I've given talks and we've all given talks about just, it's like how many emails do you have to have? And I used to actually have a coworker, and I won't say where, or if it's a him or her, but we actually would have a running bet about if someone was being promoted or leaving or there was some sort of news, how many people would hit reply all.
That's funny.
And then we would do over under, first one would get to pick, and we would play the game of who can guess closer to the number of people that would hit reply all.
Oh yeah.
And just say, congrats, good job, something. Just so that made sure like everyone saw it. It's like, we can all just hit reply.
You know what? Another thing just popped in my head, actually, a change that I didn't do, but our engineering team did, and I think it was pretty cool, is they actually have a Discord server. So we've got kind of an open room too, where we can all just pop in and chat, and that's been pretty neat, where you can hop in and out of that. So it's a non-Slack version of team communication. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things we're doing to kind of adapt.
Everyone's doing something that's interesting to hear, just how everyone's mixing it up, or even those that were, like you said, you were distributed before, but now that everyone is, off in their own little world. What was the other question around this? Oh yeah, sorry. For those early in their career, so say someone that reports to you now or that has in the past, or maybe someone that's listening that's just starting or that's got a couple years experience that's trying to move up internally in-house or become, an SEO lead or SEO manager at an agency. What advice would you give them from what you've kind of learned over the years?
Yeah, I think be intentional in that path of moving up. It's one thing to want it, but it's another thing to do something about it. And there's lots of ways to do that, but make yourself valuable, offer or even force yourself to get involved in new things to show that you've got value kind of beyond. But ask for that guidance in your career. Mentorship is huge, so seek that out because the people that can mentor you are going to help you understand what you need to do to push up that path. But again, I think it really comes back to being intentional about it. I've got someone on my team now, Kaylin. She's amazing, and this is something that I know she does. Every time we're in a one-on-one, she's saying she wants more, or she's asking how she can be better. She's spending time doing trainings. So she's really putting herself out there to show that she wants that growth, and those are the kind of people that shine. And again, keep learning. looking back at myself 10 years ago, it's like, man, I really didn't know a lot, but I thought I did. And now I've learned so much more, but I've pushed myself to keep learning. Because marketing's a lot. It's psychology, it's data, it's statistics, it's copywriting, and each of those you can go so deep on. And so that's the thing. Just keep pushing yourself to learn more. But again, show others that you are learning more, and ask to apply what you're learning to see how it actually works, and show that extra value.
My phone sucks. It's ringing right now. Thanks. I'll cut that out. Lovely.
Sales always.
Yeah, it's either a small child or something. I think a lot, you kind of started to answer it, or you started to go down the line, but I'm going to jump ahead. But what advice or tips would you give yourself, 5, 10, like when you were first going in-house, or maybe one tip for how to go through the politics before you went in-house, and then when you were starting off in the agency life, what would be one thing you'd suggest to yourself? Say, hey, you're not going to always be right, but here's something I think you should think about.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always tried to be a better listener, and not a talker. I love to jump in and talk a lot, so I think listening has always been something I've focused on to be better at from back then to now. Another thing that looking back that's always been good is just better processes always, and then working with teams or clients, setting clear goals, paths to those milestones, checking in on those frequently, and then adjusting as necessary. Not being too rigid, but alignment towards the goal can go a long way with team members or people understanding what you could, where you're going with a project. Other advice, I think, have fun. That's something, work hard to keep learning, but have fun. Don't get caught up in work too much and let it shape who you are as a person. You should actually have the opposite be true. Who you are should shape how you work. And for me, the change in thought there is kind of an evolution towards servant leadership. That was something that I learned very well from a business partner of mine, Eddie Badrina, that it allows you to really build people while also building culture through that servant leadership. Because people are really core to getting things done. So you need to treat them like people first, and not as employees, as task rabbits to get towards a project. So those are some of the things that I think I look back at and we're glad that I thought about and did, and some things I wish I'd have leaned into earlier.
I think the listening one is always tough.
Yes. To this day, like, legitimately, I think there was a meeting I was in yesterday. It was a team-wide meeting. I was like, don't talk. Let other people talk. Listen. Okay, now you can talk.
And that's, for me, that was a big thing when I went from agency to consultant, because I went the opposite way. I'm used to having a project manager and a account manager or account rep or whatever, account director, whatever that person is at wherever you're at. They would always do the talking, and then it was almost like, then they would push my buzzer, and then I could talk about something.
Totally.
And then when you're single person consultant, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's me. I have to do all of that. Oh, shoot. I have to do more talking after spending so many years trying to get myself not to just leap in and answer things.
Yeah, and one of the things I told myself back then, and still have to work on today, is not, when I talk, remind myself that, again, I am the expert, and I should be authoritative in what I say and believe in what I say. I think that was always a challenge for me, whether it was imposter syndrome or something else, that they're paying me for a reason to do this job, believe in myself and talk about it in that manner.
I think that's really hard. I think we all do it, the imposter syndrome, and question ourselves. But I think that's a really good point, is that when you are talking, and Matt, we've talked about this before, it's like when you're scared of talking, and like I still am scared of giving talks and speaking, but people still have seen you. They've been coming to see you. They keep asking you questions. Your stuff. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
Get over it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't.
Exactly, and
Yeah,
that's again, keep trying, keep learning, and don't give up on it.
yeah. It's like, yeah, I'll keep trying, but yeah,
And
but
and to your point, I think the thing that helps in that situation is just to remember that people are coming to you for this, regardless of how you feel about it. They're coming to you for a reason. So
And that's like kind of that's like the same advice that I give to everyone, because a lot of times, people forget that not everyone in the crowd is the exact same. They forget that who they're preparing it for. Like with me, a lot of times I was always worried that what am I going to teach a Dave Rohr? What am I going to teach a Mark Barrera? What am I going to teach? But then I'm like, these guys are my peers. I'm not like here to teach them. They're not here to learn from me. And if they happen to learn something, a gold nugget from me, great. Then that's a bonus. But I'm here for these guys and to teach them and to help them learn something. And once I got over that side of it, then it made a lot of that easier for me. But yeah, I think that's so true.
I can go see someone talk about a 101 topic, and I'll be like, why am I here? I'll just sit in the back, and all of a sudden they'll start talking about something that I haven't had to
A
do
different
in a
perspective,
couple
yeah.
years. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I'd never really thought to do it that way. That would actually improve my process a little bit. Because, yeah, we just get stuck in doing things how we always do them.
yeah, and as we get older, not saying that the OGs are old, but the market's changing. We gotta stay connected with things that we may not typically have.
Everything's changing. I mean, SEO's dead. How many times?
Always.
It's always dead. Every year it's dead. So is email and link building and
And you gotta keep changing, right, Dave? You're on TikTok. Like, I love your TikTok video. Just kidding. I don't see any of them.
I'm no. Dwayne has not convinced me yet.
I'm just messing with you.
No.
You'll
No,
be
no,
dancing
no.
on there in no time.
No, 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 no. We're on YouTube. You can go you can go listen to us on YouTube
We're old school TikTok.
and Instagram and Twitter and most other ones, but not TikTok, sorry.
2 years
We're on
from now,
Spotify.
mark my words.
Yeah, there's going to be a viral video of me doing some silly dance somewhere that I didn't take. That'll be the problem. That's always the problem.
There'll be a TikTok video with the beard you created.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Your wife will kill me.
Yes, you would.
And if people aren't sure what beard I'm talking about, just you're listening to the podcast, look at that shot. That's the beard I'm holding up. It's Matt's beard. That his wife-
Which my wife was still frustrated at you every once in a while. She'll get confused because someone will use that
again.
picture again as their profile that they're holding up, and yeah.
Sorry, Holly.
Good job, Dave.
I still get in trouble a couple years later. We talked about this a little bit. When you're building a team, so say you come in, and maybe there's already a team where you're at now, so this might be looking back at some of your past roles. But do you typically go in looking at where the holes are and then, hire a generalist or specialist, or do you look at, you've mostly been on the SEO side, so it might be a little bit more narrow, but do you hire someone that has SEO experience? Do you hire someone that was a link builder to do something else? Like, do you ever take a look at the generalist for specialist and go, wow, you've only worked at a SaaS company, so you only know SaaS SEO, or you've only ever done link building, or you've only ever done PPC for this small company, therefore you could never do it for a large company?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and of course it's always nuanced. But what I like to do, regardless of experience, and this is something we did back at BuzzShift, the agency where I had partners there, is that very focused on strengths. So we use the Strengths Finder as part of our hiring process, because if you had the ability and the aptitude to do something new, and the strengths in that area, then why not give you a chance? And so even if you hadn't done something, whether it wasn't PPC, but you've got some aptitude with Excel, or you enjoy statistics, then you're probably gonna be a fit for PPC, and you don't necessarily have to know a lot about it if that's a strength for you. So that's one of the ways I look at it, is really focusing on what people's strengths are and putting them into roles that amplify that. So, someone that's not strong collaborator, keep them away from anything project management, things like that. So I would say generalists are probably preferred by me because again, you can shape them, but there are situations I would say where specialists do matter. So that was, going back to Ziff Davis, I had to kind of create the SEO team from scratch. And in that case, there were specific needs we had. And so specialists were going to serve that because we didn't have the runway of training that we might have in other situations. We needed someone to come in and do that now. And with that generalist, maybe it's 3, 6, 9 months to really get that skill up to where you need it. So I think that played into some of those decisions on the specialist versus the generalist is that if I need action now, I'm going to go more towards someone who has that experience. But if I'm looking at the long-term team building, I'm probably going to take more of a generalist approach and focus on where I can grow these people.
Matt, were you going to say something? Nope, sorry.
Oh, no.
I thought you muted. All right, never mind. As the leader, how have you internally worked and fought for headcount? Is there an example you can walk through? I know we always want more budget and more headcount. Is there anything that you found to be remotely somewhat successful?
Yeah, that's always a challenge. And again, some of it comes back to that trust in your recommendations and how much of that you do or don't have within an organization. So that plays into it. But of course, the easiest way to justify, that is when you talk in dollars and business dollars and ROI. But it's not always easy to get to that answer. So, if there is a way, if traffic is monetized directly and you can show X traffic growth equals X dollars, then that's an easier case to make versus a company who's not monetized directly on their traffic like that. Or, look at a publisher like PC Mag where that cost is shared. I mean, you've got editorial that needs to do it. There's so many involved to actually make SEO work that you're all fighting for those same dollars. So it's really a hard battle in those cases. And then in others I've been in where it's like, okay, if we don't do this, we're going to fail. And you've sadly got to watch and see that failure happen as the justification. So yeah, it's all elements of it, but it's definitely ambiguous and not an easy task usually.
Curious, have you found project management or project managers to help with not just getting stuff done, but just proving that point that, look, we have these resources, the IT has those resources, our project that has potential to move this much, to the bottom line, we're just not going to get done. Have you used project management type stuff for that? Or is it mostly just for, scoping in and making sure that things hit budget and timelines?
Yeah, definitely. In the agency side of things where, everyone's forced to track hours in that way, it makes that an easier conversation. But when you go, maybe corporate side and people aren't tracking their hours, it makes it harder, and project managers can help in those and product managers as well to kind of to show that. And that is definitely one of those levers from a ROI standpoint that I've pulled on for sure. So yeah, project managers definitely can help that. If they're doing a good job and they're a good project manager, can show that, easily, then for sure that's a great place to lean on to show the hours in, hours out, and return on that.
Do you ever use you have your internal teams right now from an SEO side when you're in-house tracking hours or no?
No.
Really?
And really, the only part of that I would say is somewhat tracked is things that are tied to kind of the product and engineering teams. Tickets and Jira and that type of thing. Sometimes there'll be hours attached to those, but no, again, and I'm lucky in the current role and the support I have that we don't have to do that. It's a smaller team. There's 4 of us right now, but no, luckily not. But I have seen those situations and been in those. But in some of those, it also doesn't justify you're not able to use that data in the way that you'd expect to justify resourcing one way or the other. In some cases, it can fight against you.
That's what I was wondering, because one of the things that I always suggest for every time I give a talk at whatever conference it is, it's always about getting your project done. And I always, time after time, am asked by someone that does PPC, SEO, is the webmaster, does social. They're like, I need more help. I need more resources. I'm like, do you track your time? What? Why would I do that? To show your boss that you can't do it all. that, to give them that data. And so I'm always curious when in-house people are stretched between, the marketing, the PR, the social requirements, especially for us on the digital and SEO, since we kind of sit across really everything. I often wonder, most in-house teams, and maybe your team doesn't do this, do you guys operate like an agency? Like, do you have multiple people that come in and have asks of you, or no?
Yes, we do act like an agency in that regard, where we've got Google Forms, and you've got a request, you come to us, and we process it that way. But again, we're not logging the time against those. And I'll be clear, while we don't log the time, we do have a clear understanding of what those are. So case in point, I've got someone right now getting a lot of requests from our sales team on keyword research. So the form will tell us the quantity of those coming in. And on average, I know she's spending 1 or 2 hours. So I can arrive at that number quickly, even though they're not measuring it. So without the time logging, I would say task identification and a rough ballpark of time on that, we definitely do use. And I use that today as a means to fight for resources, or understand, even if I'm not fighting for resources, is my team working on the right things or not? Because that's another way I use that data just kind of in my head is, I'm asking someone to do this, it's going to take them 5 hours. Is that 5 hours better spent somewhere else? So while they're not logging it, I will say that you're right. I do have a sense of that, because you can't make decisions without knowing it in some regard. And then someone on my PR team the other day, actually, she doesn't log it, but I asked her kind of a resourcing question, and she came back with a list of tasks and hours. So it's there when we need it, but we're not diligent about tracking it.
Yeah, everyone's always worried about scope creep, but I think like request creep for in-house teams is really a bigger problem than ever scope creep.
And that's where those forms, like I say, it gives us a way to track the volume of the requests, and then we have a general idea of what they are. Because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be keen on how bad that creep has been. But that was one for us that we've now seen keyword research requests have grown and are continuing to grow. So we've got to figure out how to automate that through technology, or hire someone on to do that. But we wouldn't have known that had we not had some type of pulse on it.
And you're basically using those requests as that kind of way to measure.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. I think this will probably be the last question, unless Matt has any others to throw in. Over the years, what is a junior person done that reported to you that just knocked your socks off, whether it's the way they did an audit or something, or the way they presented something that changed how you approached some sort of project or task?
Yeah, that's a great one.
It's a deep question.
It is. And
You're
it's hard because
what you doing out in left field, Dave?
No, it's hard because there's so much. Like, back to the point earlier, like you think you know a lot, or you don't, but there's always someone going to teach you, and that's been very true for everyone that's worked under me as well. So one person that comes to mind back in agency days, Philip Turner. He was a guy that was straight out of college and was going to go the finance route and be a Wall Street trader, and was just mathematically smart and statistical minded, but decided he didn't want to go that route, so he wanted to do digital marketing. And so brought him on to manage paid campaigns, and just his level of data analysis and testing, I was always an advocate for it, and told him, hey, let's use the data and let's test. But he took it to a whole new level for me and really showed me that statistics matters, and what you can do with data and how quickly you can adjust tests based on that. This was back, now of course we're all big data and data everywhere, but this was, 10 years ago. So I think for me that kind of put a new lens and actually pushed me to learn more about data and statistics and embrace that and able to use that today the way I am. So yeah, someone coming straight out of college was able to show me the value of math and data in ways that I hadn't really thought about.
It's that finance background, that heavy data.
Exactly.
I think that's all I've got, Matt, unless you've got any others. I tried to make good use of Mark's time while he's here.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I now I'm trying to remember this. The Turner did he speak at a State of Search ever? I'm trying to think if I'm pretty sure I was on a panel with him before.
Could be, not sure. Yeah, wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, he would. Yeah, very sharp, very sharp. But anyway, that's interesting. But no, Mark, I appreciate you spending time with us. As I said, a lot of great insights here, and anything we reference, like to all our listeners, obviously we'll have links to, and I don't have anything, and so if you're good, Dave, again, Mark, thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you guys, really appreciated it.
Thank you, sir.
So make sure everybody take the time, go and look at, go and rate us on iTunes. And for Mark Barrera with Trust Radius and Dave Rohr with Northside Metrics, I'm Matt Siltala with Avalanche Media. And thanks for joining us, guys. Bye.